We are calling this meeting to order. Good afternoon, fellow COC members, and to all the members of the public who have joined us. Today is Thursday, October 17th, 2024. Welcome to the United to House LA Citizens Oversight Committee. It is now 2:38. Before roll call, please allow me a few housekeeping items. For members of the public who wish to speak during public comment, if you haven't already done so, please take a public speaker card, fill it out, and hand it to one of the LAHD staff. If you're joining the meeting virtually and would like to make a public comment, please refer to the instructions on the agenda on how to place yourself in the virtual queue. Speaker time. As always, we welcome and encourage public comment, as your voice is vital in how we shape our policies and direction. Thank you all for your commitment, and we want everyone to be heard. However, I think I need to say that. So if there are, actually, I'm going to skip that. You all can speak at your leisure, and you're all afforded 2 minutes. First minute on general comment, and the next minute on the specific item agenda. We will be utilizing simultaneous interpretation to prevent an interruption to our speakers. If anyone in the audience needs or requires Spanish language interpretation for this meeting, please notify LAHD staff to obtain a headset. Do we think we'll have a Spanish speaker today?
Si alguien necesita interpretación en español, por favor, díganos para darles headsets. No?
Okay, thank you. For those of you who are on Zoom that require interpretation, please select the appropriate language interpretation using the globe-shaped interpretation button, but only when you require it. Otherwise, please tune into the main audio channel. For example, if you are in the Spanish language interpretation channel and there is a public comment in Spanish, you will need to switch to the main audio to hear it in Spanish and vice versa. That closes item 1. Item 2, roll call. I will ask Michael Custodio to please take roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Roll call. Madam Chair Espinosa Coulter.
Here.
Vice Chair Greenlee. Committee Member Saya. Committee Member Chen. Committee Member Gaeta. Committee Member Holland. Committee Member Jones. Committee Member Knight. Committee Member Lipa. Committee Member Morales. Committee Member Raymond. Committee Member Reed.
Here.
Committee Member Sanchez. Committee Member Sharma. Committee Member Solano. Here. Madam Chair, you have 7. That is quorum.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That closes item 2. Item 3, public comment. We will now hear again from those who wish to join us and speak. How many public comment cards do we have? 1. And do we have any online? Nothing online. Great. Let's proceed with in-person public comment.
Okay, first person, Mr. Joe Donlin.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Joe Donlin with the United House LA Coalition. Folks were asking, like, where are all the folks today? Well, you know, we didn't do a big push today, but I know many are following along online. So really appreciate you all being here today to carry on this important work. You should have in your packet a letter from the coalition. I just wanted to lift up a couple points. Like, number 1, really excited to welcome the new members of the Citizens Oversight Committee. I know they'll be welcomed later as well, but we just really appreciate, from the coalition's perspective, everyone who is stepping forward to commit to this work. You know, it's it is gratifying, I think, to be a part of this, but it also is a lot of work, and, appreciate especially the new members stepping up into these roles, and all those of you who have been with us all along. It's just really, really important. When we first were designing the measure, coming together to envision it, we knew that this was going to be important, but the more we reflect on it in practice, it is, far more important than we ever imagined to have this advisory body, this oversight body, this body that's really developing some of the core pieces that are driving an incredible housing blueprint and plan for our city. It's no small task, so really appreciate each and every one of you. We continue to track and tally and lift up all of the successes of the ULA programs to date. And, we've tallied up a number that we put in the letter. 52,000 people have benefited from ULA programs to date. And that's folks who are receiving, rental assistance. Maybe they're working in a construction job that's, helping build the affordable housing that ULA is funding. It's folks being supported with their eviction cases, with legal assistance, or, educated on their rights through the Stay Housed LA program. All of these things ULA is funding and making, a tremendous impact. And it's only just begun. So that's why it's really exciting, all the work that's ahead of us. Regarding the items on the agenda today, one, we just wanted to lend our support to the budget conversation, and for the COC, we want to make sure the COC is really well resourced so that you all can do the work that you need to do, and have the accommodations necessary for you in that work, and also for the Inspector General, the Interim Inspector General, to be appropriately resourced for the incredible staff work that you all are providing. On the bylaws, we were recommending that they get discussed today, but also continued, because we think there's a little bit more that can be discussed. In particular, there's a couple recommendations around the conflict of interest section that we wanted to sort through, and happy to discuss further, but we outlined a couple pieces in the letter. Public Counsel is also putting together a memo that may be helpful to that conversation. And then there's, I think it's section 3.04. We suggested a couple pieces of language. One I'll lift up here, which is, that section is about, I think what is the title of that section? It's basically, when a member may be excused from the COC. And, there's a section ID that says acting in conflict with the intent or language of the measure, including opposing the construction or preservation of affordable housing. And we would suggest to add and/or opposing the protection or expansion of tenant rights. That also being a core tenet of the ULA measure and programs. The other part of section 3.04 that we thought it might be worth considering is regarding the more than 3 absences that are excused by the COC. If a member got to 4 excused absences, then maybe they might be subject to removal from the committee. And we wanted to just add some sort of clarifying language in case someone was on parental leave or extended medical leave. Maybe there's, accommodation for those situations. So I think that's all we have, but really appreciate you all, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Joe. And the feeling of appreciation for everybody in this room is deep and wide. And so thank you again. I want to check in and see if there's any comments online. No comments online. Great. So now to the COC Chair's report. We have new members. We have 3 new members. We have seat 2, seat 7, and seat 15. I'm going to describe each seat, and then I'm going to have the 2 new members that are here today introduce themselves. Seat 2 is an individual with at least 5 years' experience in nonprofit asset or property management and operations. This is now filled by Taylor Holland of Wakeland Housing and Development Corporation. Taylor, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, first time. Is it working? Sounds like it. Hi, everyone. I am Taylor Holland. I am, as Michelle described, I have 5 years of experience in a nonprofit development. I am at Wakeland Housing, Director of Housing there, and we are an affordable nonprofit developer who develops throughout Southern California. And actually, I think last week was our 25th anniversary. So we have about 10,000 units of affordable housing and affordable commercial space. Looking forward to working with you all. When the mayor's office approached me about this opportunity, I had recently stepped down from my neighborhood council, and I was on the renters' rights and homelessness committee. So obviously something near and dear to my heart. So I'm excited to serve with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I think that is definitely to our benefit. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce seat 7 only by describing what what seat 7 is and introduce the name of the occupant. She is not here today. She is confirmed tomorrow through City Council. Okay, thanks. So seat 7 is an individual with at least 5 years experience as a tenants' rights organizer or advocate working at a community-based organization level on behalf of tenants in low-income households. That seat is now occupied by Zella Knight, a Residents United Network LA leader. I will have Zella introduce herself at the next meeting, okay. All right, and then seat 15, which is an advisory non-voting youth member, is now occupied by Daniela Solano of Generations for Justice Inner City Struggle. Daniela?
Hello. Okay. Hi. I'm Daniela. I am born and raised in the city of Los Angeles, and I'm currently a community college student who is involved with the nonprofit Inner City Struggle. As mentioned, their Generations for Justice Club. Through G4J, I really explored my interest and passion for housing justice, and they really helped me nourish that. And through them and the opportunities they presented with me, I got involved in the ACT LA social housing leadership cohort, which of course, educates on Measure ULA. And it's been a wonderful time being there. And G4J and, ICS saw my interest, and they told me that this would be, a great opportunity to apply what I've learned and, share my own story in these narratives. So I'm really excited to be here and look forward to working with you guys. Thank you.
We're incredibly excited to have all of you. Thank you. So the update on the permanent guidelines, I'm going to leave it mostly to LHD and other folks in the room. But I want to tell you about some conversations that have been had sort of offline, just for transparency. So last week, Vice Chair Alan Greenlee and I received questions from representatives from City Council about eligible uses of alt model funds, particularly housing types like ADUs and single family homes, and about whether subsidy limits should in some cases be specific to by bedroom as opposed to by unit. We generally pushed back on all of the changes that we were receiving from City Council or the suggested changes, but there were some benign changes in language that was suggested around reporting matters and around aligning, incorporating language about the city's housing emergency and that it's not solved until RHNA numbers are met. So I just wanted to shed light on those discussions that they took place. I should also mention that during the SCAMP conference last week, there was an informal impromptu meeting with tax attorneys, lenders, and investors trying to find a pathway towards permanent affordability. The subject of the coalition's memo from last week. Jackson was in attendance. I'm sure he's corresponded with you all about it. There was no solution found, but and correct me if I'm wrong, Jackson, I think what Alan offered was that he and I and Scamp convene some attorneys to have further discussion about permanent affordability sometime in the next couple of weeks. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So just letting you all know that that discussion took place. And then I'll end by congratulating, I wish they were here, Cynthia Borjak, Alfonso Directo Jr., Vanessa Luna, Roberto Garcia Caballos, Jessica Melendez, and Debbie Chen for a well-attended and well-received workshop at the SCAMP conference last week about social housing 101 for developers. Good job. All right, that's it. That closes item 4, and our next agenda item is the Interim Inspector General's report, and I now invite the team to provide a brief update.
Thank you, Chair Coulter. So we've provided, the Interim Inspector General has provided the team a couple of items to discuss today. So I will do a quick introduction of the COC budget, as well as an introduction of the bylaws, and then looking ahead, planning for the town hall next month. So on the budget update, so in your agenda packet as item number 7, there is the COC budget, and a summary table is here. There's a more detailed table in the agenda packet materials itself, but you'll see that this is the entirety of the COC's administrative budget based on LAHD's latest public expenditure report for the revenues. And then we've included the items that will be incurred, or the cost that will be incurred by the Interim Inspector General for things including staff time, communications, the annual external audit that's called for in the ordinance, as well as the annual town hall also called for in the ordinance. We're working with LAHD to also capture some of the costs that the department has incurred as well for meeting room, as well as translation. So those will show up in an updated budget. For bylaws, I know we're going to have a wider discussion on this later, so I will save that detailed discussion for item number 8. As Joe brought up doing public comment, there are some suggested edits, and then in conversation with the city attorney, there are also some clarifications around quorum that we'd like to include as well. And then the town hall, this is more of a reminder to save the date. So we've reserved space in Little Tokyo from 6 to 8 p.m. on November 13th. So that will be where we host the annual town hall open to all members of the public to discuss just the progress we've made on the program thus far and get feedback from the community on where we're at and where we're going. So November 13th, 6 to 8 p.m. And with that, I will close on the Interim Inspector General's report.
Some budget that may not be full-time employed, like student workers. And you know, when we have meeting rooms here, we're requiring people to want to be mindful of maybe students, because it could be costly. Wasn't privileged enough, but I have talked to 1 or 2 members where it is a concern.
Any additional questions or comments? We're going to actually return to a more, is this true? Well, we'll be discussing, yeah, and item 7, we'll be discussing the budget more deeply, and so maybe we bring that up there as well. Okay, thank you. All right, that concludes the IIG's report. Great. We are going to move on then to LAHD's report. I understand you're providing us a brief status on revenue and expenditures, and we do have some questions for you as well.
Here's voice on. Hey, that's fun. Because the new folks will soon learn I can put on the teacher voice and that's not an issue, but I'll use the mic. So good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see y'all. It's been a little bit, and it's a pleasure to be here and provide an LHD update. We will start with revenue and expenditures. The way we've been communicating revenue, we're playing with the most digestible way for the public per the attachments, just because we're now in a second fiscal year, and obviously as each month passes, this is going to get. We just got a lot more data. As a reminder, the data dashboard, which we're excited about, is up and rolling on the LHD website, and it's the link is live at the bottom of this the slide right up here. So total to date since April 1, 2023, over $400 million and 623 transactions. We for fiscal year 24-25 thus far, we are at 91,167,000 on 137 transactions. And over the last 2 months, just this past month, we were at 28.5, which was disappointing because the previous month was our largest month to date at 39 on 70 transactions. I don't think that's enough to call a pattern. We'll watch and track closely, obviously, like relentlessly and obsessively, as we all will. So we shall see. But you can see that by and large, the trajectory is moving up. And I do think that with interest rates coming down, with potentially the chill effect of the litigation beginning to diminish, particularly once it's resolved, we should and do and could anticipate continuing to move up with those numbers. One note I wanted to flag for everybody: we realized, and we will come back to y'all with this, that in the expenditure plan for 24-25, at the time we brought it to the COC, we had not gotten our final interest accrued number, which is revenue, which ended up being approximately $5.6 million that we will add to the 24-25 expenditure plan. And we'll come back to y'all with that revised once it is approved by council. So bottom line is $5.6 million in found money for 24-25, which, you know, is not a project, but it ain't pennies under the cushion either. So we're excited about that. So any questions on revenue? And again, I remind you, and in fact, I invite you and encourage you to go to the dashboard because it's quite informative and instructive, and you can cut and peel in all different ways to look at the data. Any questions? Okay. Budget to actuals as of September of 2024, of the second month of the fiscal year. Not a lot has changed because we're still waiting for on the multifamily affordable housing accelerator plus program. Those checks are not going out yet. You have some projects that are waiting for they essentially have to convert to permanent loans, and so that's when the payouts will happen. Short-term emergency assistance is exhausted. Income support, we are excited. Actually, I'll tell you what. This is the tight one. I'm going to go to the bigger breakdown. So again, on the affordable housing programs, it's all Accelerator Plus, and it's all waiting to go out to those projects that were awarded. But on homelessness prevention, short-term emergency assistance spent out, income support is going to get spent out. Eviction defense and prevention, recall that was to essentially fulfill the existing Stay Housed LA contract through calendar year 2025, and that spend should be completed by around October of 2025. Tenant outreach and education, that remaining balance is mostly tenant outreach and education for Stay Housed LA, and protections from tenant harassment. Some of that is also outreach through Stay Housed LA, and then the staffing that is coming online. One update on that is that we have just hired and finally brought on our first 5 inspectors per the protections from tenant harassment program. They are starting up, and that's something we're all very excited about. Recall that 12 positions were approved by the City Council to implement. Those are sort of the Batman and Robin inspector and investigator teams that will be on the ground through the regional service centers. Meanwhile, the platform under anti-tenant harassment should be coming close to coming online as well. So we're excited about that. Admin balance is virtually done, and then the COC balance is there reflected. Please let me know if you have questions. And then primarily yes, Madam Chair?
You have questions, but
Yeah.
do you want to, well, we're talking about the expenditures, so let's talk a little bit about that. So, so the multi-family affordable, so those funds don't come in until perm conversion?
Yeah, yes.
And I think you know a little bit, or one of the, not you personally, your organization, did your organization receive some of the accelerator?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
I will check.
Okay. One of my questions is that, is the decision around making those funds available at perm conversion as opposed to during the construction process because of the interest carry to each of the projects. And so it's really just we should think about that and, maybe report back.
Yeah, happy to report back. Let me circle back with the HDB team, and I don't want to jump ahead of my skis. Let me find out what's behind that process and decision. Certainly happy to report back.
I actually have another question too. Could you
Yeah.
also ask about, so one of LHD's policies is to get the interest incurred on their loan up until TCO, that gets paid back to LHD. And I didn't know if that was waived as part of the accelerator program. And so I'd like to hear if that was waived.
Yeah, we can certainly check that.
Okay, thank you.
I had one question. The capacity building dollars, the 300K, I think that was in the admin budget, correct?
Yes.
And so what is the update on that?
So the update is, I'm happy to say we have just circulated within our procurement team an RFP. We've taken a lot of the feedback from this group, and we're just going to go straight forward with an RFP that will incorporate, presupposing approval by council of the expenditure plan and the money there, an RFP that will cover not just the 300K, but a full sort of beginning rollout of a program. So one of our goal, and y'all know this is our goal with the expenditure plan, as well as the permanent program guidelines, is to basically be poised to hit the ground in a sprint the minute presupposing that council approves all the program guidelines. And so in the report, and I know a lot of y'all have read that very closely, we have recommendations for very explicit next steps. Because that RFP was already approved by council, we have the authority to do it. We'll be able to spend that in. And so the minute that gets approved, we're going to get it on the street. one challenge we have realized is that the citywide procurement portal is going to be shut down for approximately a month over the winter holiday. So for reboot, which I presuppose will be good for the city, I mean, obviously, but so we're trying to get it out and through that process so that late January, we can have the RFP on the street. So we're excited. We actually, as a team, been working a lot on that over the last couple of weeks.
I have a question in the income support
Yes.
for seniors and disabilities. That is the 11,000 and 0 for, and then the balance 11. Why is that 0? Because no support for the seniors, or the seniors?
Oh, no,
didn't ask, or
so-
what does mean?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what does mean the 0 in the night, September 30 on the 24? Why is 0?
So are you saying, you mean in terms of what's been spent so far?
Yeah.
Yeah, so recall that we all in this body came to the conclusion that the development of that program for the permanent was pretty complicated. The least obvious for the city in terms of what we typically do. So that's where we moved some money to the short-term emergency assistance, kept the 11 million there. We then went into a process to develop a program, an interim program, and came back to the COC with. And as part of my legislative update, we just got that approved last week by the full city council. So we are going into full implementation mode. And just as a reminder, because it's exciting, it is an income assistance program consistent with the ballot measure, not a rental assistance program per se, but an income assistance program. We've identified a number of seniors and persons with disabilities from the short-term emergency assistance program who had more debt than made them eligible for the short-term emergency assistance. And we are piloting, in essence, a program where they will receive $20,000 in cash assistance. They had, on average, $21,000 in debt. They will receive a $20,000 cash assistance award contingent on a key factor. One, their eligibility. So they're going to have to be 30% AMI, so very low income. They will have to still reside in the address here in the city of Los Angeles where they were when they originally applied. And because most of these folks will be participants or recipients of some type of benefits, whether it's CalWorks or Social Security or what have you, and there are complications there, and we don't want their benefits impacted negatively, or at least we want them to make the most informed decision possible. We are working closely with United Way, one of the key partners in the United House LA Coalition, as you know, LAFLA, and Changewell, and we have the United Way is funding LAFLA, Attorneys Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, attorneys to provide benefit and tax consultation to every participant. So when somebody has qualified, and we're getting ready to sort of roll into that administrative process, when they've been confirmed to qualify, they will be referred to an attorney. And that attorney is going to do most likely more than one conversation. Like this is not a, hey, you down for this? See ya. It's going to be really walking them through their options, helping them understand the implications of receiving the assistance, but then also helping them to figure out maybe spending plans on how you can minimize the impacts. And then that will be signed off, and then they will get the assistance. Meanwhile, we're really excited to be in the process of identifying an academic partner that will be funded by philanthropy to evaluate the program and to evaluate how just how that assistance impacts those folks' lives over time. And the goal is that that is going to help inform the long-term program, right? Like what does a one-time assistance payment versus a monthly assistance payment, mean? How are people using these dollars? And so it's such a complicated program. What we really realized, Commissioner, in the process of this is that there are a lot of folks all over the country doing, and you all are very engaged in this work, doing general basic income programs and different pilots around basic income. Not a lot of people are doing them for seniors and persons with disabilities, not because people don't care about seniors and persons with disabilities, but just because there are much different complications, right? Including setting up a financial cliff where unless we give them money, unless they receive money forever, they suddenly, they drop off that cliff. So we want to be really deliberate about this and make sure that we don't create unintended consequences in terms of how it's implemented. And so the evaluation, doing the academic study is really critical, making sure that they make informed decisions by having this legal consultation is really important. And we're getting ready to roll. Council adopted a week ago. We had to go through 2 different committees and go through council, but it got done. We're excited.
Yes, and we can to have that information in simple way in our website to inform to the seniors, because I think so it's important they know why they didn't receive now or why no is collecting that support. But I think so if we put in our website a simple way, how is that process? Can we do that? Well,
yeah, we definitely can. I want to be really transparent and make sure that everyone knows, it's not enough money to sort of open up a program with this interim one. That universe is already identified in terms of who. So there's not going to be an application process because we already have those folks. But yes, we will definitely highlight it, Commissioner. And I know this is really crucial to your constituents and to your work. So we will, for sure. And we'll figure out a way to keep that narrative going, right, in terms of what we're seeing with those folks so that we can tell a story and tell it in a way that's palatable and digestible for the public.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So one follow-up question on that. I understand for short-term emergency assistance, there needs to be a true-up, so that program won't be available for subsequent fiscal years. But for the income support for rent-burdened seniors and persons with disabilities, will there be an application or a NOFA available for the next fiscal year?
Great question, Commissioner, and that is part of what we will almost immediately be segueing into, just candidly figuring out. So the partners that we're working with, this body, the coalition, United Way, Legal Aid Foundation Los Angeles, Changewell Project, they have agreed to work with us along with the academic partner, and we're interviewing academic partners literally as we speak. They have agreed to work with us to take our evaluation and assessment of the interim program, this program, and help us turn it into a plan for long-term implementation. Whether or not that is an application, whether that's something we do with partners and identify folks and do more sort of surgical outreach versus an open portal, that kind of thing. Those are still questions we want to figure out in terms of how best to reach the most vulnerable, right? And I think that's part of what we'll figure. Commissioner got a haircut. But that's part of what we'll figure out. What we'll figure out in this process. What I think is, what we know is we are going to have money. We're going to do it in an informed way, and we want to make sure that we're taking lessons and learnings from this interim program in terms of figuring out what that outreach looks like. Because you could do it a number of different ways. You could open up an application, or you could go through referrals and things like that. We want to figure out the best way to get to the people who need it the most.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so just to clarify, the $11 million available in expenditure in fiscal year 23-24, that's already, that universe, like you said, the people have been identified, that funding has effectively been committed. But for next year, there will be
Yes.
additional, okay, great.
23? Or no,
For income support,
there, 13.
13,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
And by the way, when we have a marginally ripe plan, actually that's not true. It will be ripe and it will be it'll be realized. We'll be coming to y'all with that, then to council to get approval, and then implementation. So you'll get the outline of everything. Okay. So I will go forward then to legislative updates. And number one, interim income support program guidelines were approved on October 9th, and implementation ensues. It will take time. Part of that process that we just discussed is that it's going to, these lawyers are going to be doing the outreach to folks, and they've committed to not just saying, well, we called and didn't get an answer. They're going to call, and then they're going to call, and then they're going to call, and then they're going to email, and they're going to chase folks down to help, make sure that they know that this isn't just a random spam call. They're going to, try to connect with folks, and it's going to take some time to get through that process. But this is really, I think, and I know a lot of our partners agree, this is very sort of groundbreaking work in terms of an assistance program for seniors and persons with disabilities. And this COC, I think, can be very proud of that, and proud of y'all's leadership on it. Certainly the department is. And, it's one of the really big pieces that we're excited about. And so while $11 million for a couple hundred seniors feels small, what it can mean long-term with ULA, I think, is meaningful. And in terms of what we learn for the rest of the country, we can really be leaders on this. The 24-25 expenditure plan should be, it will be in the last Budget, Finance, and Innovation Committee meeting in late October. This is frankly not particularly complicated. It's just got to be approved. This is the expenditure plan that y'all saw again and reviewed, plus the $5.6 million in interest income that we added to it. We'll submit that for the record for y'all to talk about, ask questions, or receive and file once it's approved by council. But it's the same expenditure plan you all reviewed, plus 5.6 million, and that 5.6 million is basically funneled through the true up formulas. That'll be in council committee, and then it should go to full council fairly quickly after that. As long as that is approved before, or even frankly in tandem with the program guidelines, then we're all good from a timing perspective, because we need that approved so that when the guidelines are approved, we have the green light to spend the money to get going. Meanwhile, as been alluded to, the program guidelines pending city council consideration. The 120-day clock ends on 12/20. That is the last day of council for calendar year 2024. And we anticipate, at this point, it is not my agenda, but we anticipate being in the Housing and Homeless Committee the first part of November. And while it will be tight, there is adequate time on the calendar. There is adequate time on the calendar for the guidelines to be approved. And if they're not approved by 120 days, then they go into effect. And then lastly, just as a reminder, we're currently working on an LAHD staffing plan as well. And that is basically going to be something that will be a 3-year phase-in based on the expenditure plans, based on the guidelines, et cetera, focusing on what has to be hired early, and then down the road, what has to be hired later, for lack of a better way to put it. So for example, new positions in asset management, we won't be bringing online until years 2 and 3, as opposed to years 1, for example. And then we're continuing to work on all of the pieces to go into effect once the guidelines and expenditure plan are approved. Per Commissioner Raymond's point, the RFP around capacity building, teeing things up for RFPs on both alt model programs, RFPs on, or NOFAs on both, not RFPs, NOFAs on both alt model programs, NOFAs on acquisition rehab. And so we're just trying to make it to where we can be as ready to move as quickly as possible as soon as the guidelines are approved. And then lastly, I would just state for the record that our general manager Ann Sewell's last day was last Friday, October 11th. She was a force of nature who knew more in her pinky about housing than I think anybody I've known. And so we will miss her, and we anticipate an announcement about her replacement imminently, and I look forward to introducing that superstar to you superstars. So with that, I'll obviously take any questions and appreciate y'all's time.
It probably bears repeating some of the questions that you're hearing City Council.
Not a lot, quite frankly, other than those consistent with what you have heard. I think that, and I'd say this if I was in council, I think everyone in the city council is, somewhat struck by the scale, right? And so I think, so part of the delay in public deliberation at this point is just getting their arms around the scope of it, right? I mean, in the end, we're talking about 300 pages of reports and guidelines for 11 programs and hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think there's that blank moment where they're like, ooh, we got to really, this is going to take some time. So not a lot yet. Mostly us doing briefings and people being like, okay, look forward to talking more later.
Our IIG team is joining you also on November 6th for the presentation to HA8. Can I make that up?
Yes.
Okay. Any additional comments, questions? All right, we're going to thank Greg.
All right.
Much.
Thank y'all.
That concludes item 6. We're moving on now to item 7, which is approval of the COC fiscal year budget. Let's see. So Richard, you took us through that as noted on in the IIG report. Actually, are you? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so I can give a quick summary and then open it up to questions and discussion. So as noted in the IIG's report, this is the budget for fiscal year 24 and 25. And we drew the budget numbers there, as you'll see in the first footnote from the expenditure plan from June 26th of this year. And so obviously we'll update with any new numbers once they come in. But I think of note for committee members is that the budget includes an augmentation for the Interim Inspector General staffing budget to basically continue the level of support that we've been offering during the prior fiscal year. And just in terms of kind of order of operations here, so the ordinance notes that the COC must approve its own budget, but because LAHD administers the contract for the Interim Inspector General, they'll be responsible for any amendments to that contract. So the first step is that the COC approves the entire budget, inclusive of the IIG's budget, but you'll be making a recommendation to LAHD to amend the IIG's contract in accordance with your approved budget. I'm going to pause there because that was a weird turn of phrase to see if I need to clarify or if anyone has questions there. Okay.
So Richard, will we be seeing the contracts or perhaps the breakout of these numbers here?
Specifically for the IIG?
Yeah.
That's a question I'm going to defer to LAHD on.
I've seen at some point I saw the contract, but for now I'm getting the monthly invoices. It's just a standard 30,000 a month.
20. It's
20 right now.
Yeah, currently 20. Yeah.
See, so the augment is just for
To get
additional services or to?
Well, I'll let Richard respond to that.
Yeah, so the augment reflects, when we initially entered into the contract, we agreed to a retainer of 20,000 a month. That's currently reflected. The augment includes the actual work and hours that we did. So while the retainer was flat, our hours were not. And that incorporates things that were just unanticipated but necessary, including support for the ad hoc committee, for guideline development and just ongoing COC support. So you'll see that the Inspector General budget moving forward has increased to $30K a month just to make sure that we maintain that same level of service continually. So this is really to get us to reflect actual hours worked thus far.
And Commissioner, if the question was, can you see, I mean, you can see everything.
Thank you. No, I was just trying to understand how the numbers came out. So, I understand the 120,968 is the flat fee. That's the retainer of 20,000 per month, I presume, for the last 6 months or so. And then moving forward, the 236,000. Wait, I'm sorry, is that moving forward or is that like past fees?
So that is past, that is truing up the numbers to reflect the work that we've already done,
Oh, okay.
plus the 30K moving forward.
It's a 30K retainer not to exceed?
Right.
Okay, got it. Understood. Thank you.
And then I think the only other thing here, so you'll know that there's an expenditure line that says incurred by the interim or permanent inspector general that we are then paid on a reimbursement basis per the terms of our contract. We're also working with LAHD, as I noted earlier, to capture some of their costs that the department is incurring on behalf of the COC. That will come out of the balance, that last line item there, and we can reflect that at a future date. But those things will include things like an LHD, correct me if I'm wrong here, fees for meeting rooms, the translation fees. We should also put in a line item for the stipends that are called for in the measure. And to Deepika's point, depending on where the committee goes, potentially including a line item there for reimbursement of transportation costs. That's a question to LAHD on whether you all administer that or if that's something that the Interim Inspector General will administer.
I'm not sure yet. I got to find out what we can do. Yeah.
Question. So I understand that there is a broad question about whether or not the monthly retainer ever inhibited involved in any of the conversations, or if it is just, give the resources as they are needed.
Yeah, so right now and historically we have just done what it takes to get things done, hence the request for the augment. So the 20K retainer hasn't inhibited the particularly Cecilia's time on the project. She did step back in the summer just for taking her own leave, but that wasn't a reflection of budget limitations or anything.
Great. Any additional questions? Okay, so having considered and discussed item 7, I'll entertain a motion on the proposed budget.
I move to approve the Citizens Oversight Committee budget for the 2024-2025 fiscal year with a recommendation that LHD amend the Interim Inspector General's contract to align with the committee approved budget.
For a second, the motion. Great. So now we open it to discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing no discussion, and having a motion and having it seconded, I think we're ready to take a vote.
Yes, Madam Chair. Roll call vote. Chairperson Espinosa Coulter,
Yes.
Committee Member Chen, Committee Member Holland, Committee Member Jones, Committee Member Morales, Committee Member Raymond, Committee Member Reed, Committee Member Sharma. The motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that closes item number 7. We move now to item number 8, which is the COC action item to approve the bylaws. Again, I will turn it over to Richard.
All right, I will give the highest level summary of this, but invite folks to ask questions about specific provisions. I know that this is something where we want to maybe spend some more time considering this. So I'll do a quick summary and also note some of the conversations we've had with the city attorney about some updates, particularly around the interplay between quorum and meetings that lack quorum as well, and some suggestions there. So as you all know, these are bylaws that detail rules, processes, and procedures that the committee will employ to conduct its business. It details the committee's role, it specifies membership, and sets forth procedures for appointing officers, establishing subcommittees, and conducting the meetings. So as I mentioned, one item of note that was raised by the city attorney was just the interplay between sections 7.03 and 7.04. 7.03 establishes quorum, describes what establishes quorum, and 7.04 describes what happens in the absence of quorum. And so, because first off, for 7.03, the number to reach quorum is 7, and there will be a clarification that it's 7 voting members, since we do have non-voting members on this body, shall constitute quorum. So that would be the first amendment there. The other thing is in section 7.04, where the meetings would lack quorum, we would add numerets there, or romanettes there. And for that section, we just want to be clear on that a majority of the voting committee members are required to take any action. And so we've got long language that we'll provide if we continue this in a slide, so that in an updated document. But Romanet number 2 would then state, except as otherwise required by law or by these bylaws were not inconsistent therewith, action by the Oversight Committee shall be taken by a majority vote of the entire voting membership of the Oversight Committee. And then there would be one more Romanet 3 under section 7.04, that will note that if a quorum is not present when the meeting is scheduled to commence, a majority of the Oversight Committee present or the chair at their discretion may cancel or adjourn the meeting, delay its commencement, or meet as a committee of the Oversight Committee, or meet as a committee of the Oversight Committee for the purpose solely of discussing the issues. And that aligns with city council language as well. So those are kind of the 3 clarifications that we would add from the get. And then I know that we also wanted to consider some of the items raised by the coalition. So with that, I will pause, see if there are any questions for me.
So did you want to present, would you mind presenting a bit about the amendments that you're suggesting? Oh,
Hello again, Joe Donlan with the United House LA Coalition. Sure. So section 3.04. Oh, great. Thank you. Part B, that's where it reads more than 3 absences from Oversight Committee meetings in a 12-month period, even if excused by the Oversight Committee. We were suggesting language to the effect of special cases may be considered at the discretion of the Oversight Committee. Again, this is where we thought it might be useful to have some room to breathe there in case there are cases where someone has a medical leave or parental leave that extends beyond those 3 monthly meetings.
saying that the ordinance is.
Yeah, I was wondering about those corrections. If they're in the ordinance, then we'd have to probably take it back to my office to see if there's anything we can do that's outside of the ordinance language.
Yeah, we definitely support abiding, by the ordinance itself. Of course, I think it's the spirit that we want to try to have reflected somehow to accommodate those special cases.
Okay, and then you already brought up the cannot act in conflict with.
Yeah, under 3.04.I.D.
Okay.
Is that helpful? And then the other section was section 7.07, the conflict of interest. We didn't propose particular language, but we have some thoughts about some of the particular terms that could be further specified and described. We were concerned that it was overly broad, such that it could, capture everyone and anyone who steps near a ULA piece of paper or something. And I don't think that's the intention. I think, we want to allow subject matter experts to be a part of these conversations, to be a part of this body. And as mentioned, Public Counsel does have a memo that may be helpful to thinking through some of this language that they are finalizing. Yeah. So for that reason, that's why we thought it might be good to continue this until the next meeting. Yeah.
But I want to open it up to discussion before we make the decision.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to second the concern about the overly broad language and conflict of interest, because we all are, abiding by the ethics trainings that we've had and things like that. And so just seems like, what does represents mean? Any organization the member represents? Like, I work for a coalition, there's 48 member organizations. I don't know all, every single thing that they're involved in. So it seems so broad. Like, I wouldn't know how to abide by this yeah.
We could run it by Renee Stottle too with our ethics division to see how we can.
I have the same concerns, and I also think it's legally overbroad. And so I really want the ethics committee to be, I actually looked at Public Counsel's earlier memo, and I think we have been applying the rule quite broadly. And I really think, in concern for this commission to continue, we're not able to continue if we have such broad guidelines.
So we're going to continue. Now, can I just say we're going to continue? Okay, we're going to continue this item and until our next meeting of this body. no action then.
Mhm.
We are then at item number 9, which is where we make a broad call to COC for items that they want to see on the future agenda. That meeting is currently scheduled for November 14th, but there are discussions about that date.
Yes, we're having discussions about the November 14th date. Scheduled for the 13th. So stay tuned about November 14th.
Okay, so
Go ahead, question. So will there be further discussion and preparation on this town hall?
So yes, the short answer is yes, but the longer answer is that it is a fairly short turnaround time to plan the town hall to satisfy the measure of having one town hall per calendar year. So the IAG and the COC chair and vice chair are working quite closely to develop a panel of COC representatives and public members that have experienced COC program or ULA programs. I'll say that I think we are treating this town hall as a first round learning experience. We've never done a town hall like this before. In the future, we would like to have a very well thought out and planned ad hoc committee to solicit participation from like the COC members as a whole. In terms of right now, we're working with the chair, vice chair most closely, but welcome any and all feedback. And you will be receiving more information from me shortly. We wanted to like announce that the town hall is happening first before sending out more detailed information. Volunteers for a panel. I would love to know who would love to be on the panel, but I think this would probably be best suited over email. And I'm happy to follow up with individual folks, but if you want to find me after the meeting to volunteer, otherwise you can raise your hand and I can take note of who wants to volunteer now. Thank you for your flexibility as this is the first time any of us are doing this, and the measure is fairly broad as to what the town hall should entail. So happy to take feedback.
Comments or questions or suggestions for future agenda items?
We're on future agenda item.
We're on, yeah.
Yeah, well, we had started a discussion about the evaluation activities and like setting up more of a structure for how we're evaluating the programs. At one point, we had talked about having an ad hoc committee about evaluation, so maybe we could discuss evaluation at the next meeting.
Housing needs. I think that's good. Go ahead.
I'd like to put an update on what LAHD is doing with harassment and 12 people, aside from the citations, and how you're working with the city attorney. I'd like more information on
that. Chair Coulter, could I just announce a brief update? So we're hoping to have a draft RFP for an auditor to do some of those metrics and evaluations pieces ready by the December meeting. So that's something that the IAG is working on as well.
We're having, so there's the needs assessment, which actually we put out earlier this year. Is that right? Yeah, we put out the needs assessment earlier this year. And so the audit will respond in part to the new evaluation pieces of that. That answers, okay.
Yeah, that answers my question.
Okay. No other questions? Meeting, that concludes our agenda, and we can now adjourn. All right, great, we're adjourned. Thank you.